The Club Championship Show on OTB in partnership with AIB. Proud sponsors of the Football, Hurling and Camogie All-Ireland Club Championships. Hashtag the toughest.
Show here on OTB Sports, which is brought to you by AIB. We've got a huge weekend in store. 5 finals taking place across 4 provinces, with finals in both hurling and football. We're going to be talking to the Downs Niall Mitchell in a few minutes' time. Donnchadh Boyle is going to join us to look forward to the weekend's hurling and to review the matches from last weekend. And we've got the football pod's Tommy Rooney with us as well. Tommy, how are you getting on?
Morning, Will. How are things?
Good. I'm looking forward to your power rankings, which we're going to do in a little bit, as we get down to a stage now where I think a lot of the clubs who are left will have looked at the All-Ireland ladder and what's going to be a fairly clear picture after the first few provincial football finals this weekend. Yes.
I always used to give Owen Sheehan a good bit of grief for his power rankings. They aren't easy, Will. They're not easy. And Cian Johnson put a version together for us. I have a couple of disagreements, a couple of points of contention with that. So, look, there's a couple of favourites, obviously, because of who's left in the All-Ireland, but I think anyone left at this stage has a chance.
Keep them on ice for a moment. Let's have a look at the results from last weekend. It was a pretty crucial weekend as we come within a couple of months now of the All-Ireland final, starting with the Leinster Senior Football Championship or Senior Hurling Championship semi-finals even from last weekend. Kilmacud Crokes against St Mullins. Oisin O'Rourke scoring 11 points as the Dublin champions beat St Mullins of Carlow by 124 to 1 goal and 12. Ballyhill Shamrocks were definitely tested by Naas, could have conceded 3 or 4 goals early on, but the returning TJ Reid with 1 goal and 6 points as the defending champions came through there by 3 goals and 22 points to 1 goal and 16. We also know that St Thomas are now 5 in a row Galway Senior Hurling Championship winners. They eventually came through after a replay against Loughrea. Mark Caulfield got the all-important goal in the game, and St Thomas is now 5 on the bounce in Galway. Meanwhile, in the Munster Club Senior Football Championship semi-finals from the weekend just gone by, we had 2 pretty dramatic games and a little bit of a surprise here. Newcastle West coming through after extra time, the Limerick champions against Clonmel Commercials of Tipperary. Owen Hurley crucially scoring 6 points for Newcastle West as they won by 116 to 1 goal and 11. And Cairns O'Reilly's of Kerry can look forward to their first Munster decider since 2009, just about holding on in the end against Éire Óg of Ennis by 1 goal and 9 points to 1 goal and 8. We also had the Ulster Club Senior Football Championship semi-finals at the weekend. Kilcoo up against Enniskillen, and it was Kilcoo, the defending All-Ireland and Ulster champions, coming through. Sheelan Johnson scoring 2 of their goals. Most of their good work done in the first half when they played with the wind. 3-14 to 1 goal and 9. And then we had a closer one on the second day, but again, Glen the favourites, the Derry champions, coming through against Cargan of Antrim by 1 goal and 10 points to 8 points. And it was Danny Tallon with 1 goal and 4 points for Glen there. So, Tommy, in many ways, that sets up probably the dream Ulster final that we were talking about with Cara O'Kane last week. The idea of Glen going up against Kilcoo, that is a heavyweight tie. 2 teams who I think have got realistic aspirations of going all the way in the club championship this year.
100%. Whoever comes out of that, Will, is going to back themselves to go all the way. Glen have been coming for a long time. They got the secret sauce with Conor Glass coming home and Malachy O'Rourke taking over, which has sort of put all their promise and the prospects of their savage underage teams over the last couple of years together, and they've now won a couple of Derry championships. Came very close to beating Kilcoo, if I'm not mistaken, last year, where they brought to extra time, where the Kilcoo win by a point or 2. So this is going to be a really, really good game, and really looking forward to having a look at who comes out on the other side.
Well, look, you're living in Munster at the moment, and I think many people probably thought Clonmel Commercials, after their quarter-final victory, were going to go back to another provincial final. What a result for Newcastle West. I know OTB AM were chatting to some of the lads from the club earlier this week, but what a boost for Limerick football, and what an achievement by Newcastle West to dump Clonmel out.
Yeah, the lads had Ian Corbett on yesterday, and Newcastle West also have Cian Sheehan, who was an All-Star nominee too this year. So an impressive side when they got going. But like, and they will have it from the last time. Interesting, listen to Ian Corbett. The last time they played Clonmel, they were up, and Clonmel came back and bet them and went on to win a Munster final that year, scoring a late goal against Nemo. So an unbelievable story, because I would have had Clonmel Commercials very high up in my power rankings if they had made it through. Very impressive outfit with the Kennedys, Quinlivan, Lonergan, a number of quality intercounty players, Kevin Fahey as well, and Newcastle West did enough to hold them off. It's going to be an interesting final with Cairns O'Reilly. because Cairns Raleigh have obviously had a funny year. They didn't win a game in the Kerry County Championships, and they come through and they win the club championship. They have a couple of lads flying back from Dubai, Jack Savage and Cormac Coffey. Gavin O'Brien's in New York. So they just about held off Éire Óg on the other side of the draw. And Éire Óg will probably be kicking themselves. They missed a couple of chances late on. They didn't take advantage of David Moran's red card. So Newcastle West must be backing themselves to give that Munster final a good rattle as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. As well, do you see the just sheer box officeness of David Clifford at the weekend, where you've got a Munster Club Junior Football Championship game selling out? And no doubt, I'd say that's probably down to a lot of neutrals who were going to watch Clifford and the boys.
Definitely, and it was class to see that email coming in on Saturday morning. I'm not often a man for checking my emails at the weekend, but that popped up, and you're just looking, you're like, this is actually class. Junior football. It just shows when the players are kind of profiled, and obviously he's just different gravy on a different scale. But like, there is quality club games happening around the country, all around the country, in every spot. Like, so people will go to watch games. They will go to watch quality. They will turn up to see the best players playing. So I think that was a good shot in the arm for junior championships all around the country, because there is very good footballers playing junior football. Yeah,
look, Clifford again is a man who could probably do with a break with the amount of football he's played this year. He's going to miss the Kerry holiday now. But look, that's it. If he wants Fossa to do well, he's going to have to stay around.
100%. And and they didn't even do damage on the scoreboard this weekend. It was the two O'Shea brothers who did the damage this weekend for Fossa. So yeah, he's not going to pack it in now at this stage of the year on the club, and they've been in such a good run, and he's had such a good year across the board. So they lost the Sigerson final. Is that the only mark on his card this year?
I think
David
so.
Clifford, he lost the Sigerson final. Did he win McGrath Cup? Clean sweep everywhere else. National League title, Munster, All Ireland. Lost the Sigerson final. Won with East Kerry,
Divisional
County Championship. He's got the junior championship. So yeah, there you go. He's not going to walk away from a Munster final.
No, it's not bad. What a year it'll be. I think he'll have played 40 odd games by the end of the season. But look, again, I think as his manager said at the weekend, in many ways it's the dream if you're a player, if you are playing that regularly, because you're not going to be putting in big blocks of training. Like, realistically, if you're playing that many games week on week, you're going to play a game, it's recovery, it's a game, which I'd say as a player, Tommy, is probably far more enjoyable than long blocks of training and waiting for games.
Yeah, that's all anyone wants, Will, is just to play football. And when you're in the groove and you've got that bit of momentum and you're having games back to back, it's brilliant. Like, remember Lockmore Castleiney and their run that they had last year, and they were going football hurling week on week for maybe 16, 17, 18 weeks. And all they do was maybe 20 minutes of football during the week and maybe 40 minutes of hurling, and they just split it up once a week. One game, one training, 2 games. It's a good ratio.
We'll have Noel Mitchell with us in a moment. Just to touch on that final this coming weekend, Kilmacud Crokes, again, we'll look at your power rankings and see how high you have them, but I was incredibly impressed with the control that they showed the last day. Both games were on TV at Croke Park in the semi-finals a couple of weekends ago, and they blew Portaranton out of the water. Portaranton team who put in 2 or 3 points in the year before, pushed them all the way, had to wait until the 47th minute to register a score from play. Shane Walsh, I think, had a bit of an illness, so they were able to take him off with 15 minutes to go. No Paul Mannion because of his injury. And yet Crokes exerted complete dominance over that game.
Yeah. Did you expect it to be as a big a margin in the end, given how Portaranton got on last year, and the way Crokes generally just do enough? Like, even in the Dublin Club Championship, they squeak out results, they win by a couple of points, they never really blow teams away. That was a bit of a surprise, wasn't it? I
think it was. I think there was a feeling in Portaranton maybe they were coming towards an end of a cycle after their 3 in a row in the Laois Championship. Probably didn't help in a way that Martin Murphy, their manager, had already decided that he was going to be stepping away because he's going in to work with the Offaly management team for next season. So that was known before they went out in the provincial. And then the feeling was they played really well against their neighbours O'Dempsey's in the Laois final. And you're thinking, this is the level Portaranton can get to. And if they're at that level, they're going to give the provincial run a really good go. And then they stuttered a little bit in Wexford in their first round in Leinster, played quite well against Palatine, so it was difficult to actually get any kind of read on their form going into the Kilmacud Crokes game. But definitely you thought that with Portaranton being very difficult to break down, I expected that game to be much more of an arm wrestle and to be a lot closer than it was. Now, I know Kilmacud kicked on a few points at the end, which maybe lost the scoreboard a little bit, but that doesn't take away from the fact at all that, Tommy, they were by far the dominant team. The other game was a little bit more mental, and we'll talk to Niall about it in a moment, between the Downs and Rathote, where I felt like the Downs had that game won 2 or 3 different times, and then just before half time, Rathoke get a scoring spree to get the game back level, and then even in the second half after Mitchell's his goal, you're thinking the Downs are home and hosed, and even with 5 or 6 minutes to go, they look really comfortable. They got the second yellow card, which meant they went a man short, and then next thing there was a huge comeback from the Meath champions, and in a way maybe the Downs were a little bit relieved to actually hold on at the full-time whistle.
Definitely. I think Rathote, the Meath champions, missed a couple of frees late on, and now there were a couple of tough frees, especially for Jack Flynn. There was one, I think he hit the post as well. Like, sometimes you just when you're a couple of points down and you have the momentum and you've kicking a couple, when Gowan kicked a couple of points, kicked a mark and a couple of points from play, McMahon kicked a big point, you just need those frees to go over. And I think if Rathote had brought the Downs to extra time, it would have been very interesting to see what would have happened there, because they were two very, very evenly matched teams. It was a cracking game of football. The pace was sensational. I think the Downs were, on balance, the Downs were the better side. Like, they had the better first half, the majority of the second half. Brilliant goal. They could have had another goal as well. So, I think Larwall probably owed Rathote one as well. Do you remember that county final a couple of years ago when Gael Columkills and Meath, it was just one of the COVID championship finals that were on TV. Gael Columkills are chasing their first senior title in, could have been forever, could have been a long time. I'm not sure how long it was, but they had been knocking on the door for a while. And Joey Wallace slides in at the back post and punches in a goal for Rathote in the rain in Navan, and they won that day. So I think, that one was coming maybe for Larwall to get one over on Rathote.
Well, look, Noel Mitchell is with us now. Niall, how are you getting on?
Hi, Will, how are things? Hi guys, how are you?
We're just chatting there. I guess relief probably at the full-time whistle, a bit of history made for the club as well. Niall, you've been waiting since 2006 to get your hands on a Westmeath title, 50 years to get back into a Leinster Club Senior Football Championship final for what's going to be your second decider now for the Downs. But when you got off the field at the end of that Rathoke game, was it a bit of relief that that late lead hadn't slipped?
Yeah, pure relief, to be honest. Maybe a mixture of probably a couple of things, letting Rathoke back into it, touch of complacency. The send it off definitely didn't help, because I think they pushed their keeper out, and obviously they had the extra man as well, so they kind of had us outnumbered around the middle, and they pushed up on our full forward line. We simply just couldn't win a kick out, and the pressure was unreal. So pure relief, I suppose, to get over the line. As mentioned there, I thought, probably over the 60 minutes we were the better side, but, that doesn't always happen where the better team wins. So, I also mentioned there, although we had nothing to do with that game, that St. Kells versus Rathote game, like, personally, it was in the back of my head, like, this isn't going to happen to our manager again, like, the same team. Not going to lie, at the end of the game, that was in the back of my head. So, look, I think 4 minutes is added on. I think we did very well with regards 4 minutes added on. I think 60th minute they got it back, the level game. So it was 4 minutes. Looking up at the scoreboard, there was 4 minutes left, and it was a draw game. And us not being able to win a ball, it was quite nerve-wracking. But I think some of the guys there, especially the subs there, won one or two important balls. We got up the field, and I suppose we killed it a bit. Won a free, I think, won a couple of frees. A ball went for Hawkeye as well. So we kind of just, we're delighted the clock was ticking down, and just, finally we got over the line. So that last free as well went wide, and we had a fair idea that ball had to go over the bar, or that was it. And once you've seen it, go across the goals and wide, we were just delighted. You could see obviously from the TV footage and that what it meant to us at the end when that did go wide.
Niall, what's been the key? Because in many ways you've been the common team in Westmeath for quite some time, with a succession of minor and under-21 teams which you were involved in that got over the line in county finals. But to actually get to the top of the mountain in Westmeath this year, what's the difference been, or has this just been a maturity of the team?
There's probably a number of things. Definitely maturity of the team is, probably the number one thing. I think, when you come out of underage, the first thing you probably expect is, okay, we're going to go on and we're going to win a senior straight away. And it just doesn't happen like that. You've seen Lomans there for a couple of years as well. They lost a good few championships as well, like Gary Castle and that, when they were coming from underage. So you don't just win these championships straight away, when you're 19, 20. It takes till you're probably 23, 24, 25 to really, get to know how to win these, tough games like the game we did win in the county final. So I'd definitely say maturity is one. Our panel now is around average age around 23, 24, 25. So we're in a good position age-wise. With regards to the Westmeath Championship, I think, every game we go into, maybe previously, we've always, I suppose, targeted key men, and I suppose maybe have concentrated too much on the opposition. While this year, like nearly every club, I suppose, throughout the country, does video analysis. But it's amazing that we have not done 1 minute of video analysis as a group, as players. We have not done 1 minute of video analysis of any team this year. And that's no different for the weekend. We haven't sat down as a group and looked at their key men. Obviously, the management do that, and the hours they put in is ridiculous, the work they put in. But they filter that information down to us, and I suppose the men that's marking their key men. So I think we've just concentrated on ourselves, concentrated on our own strengths rather than, the opposition's strengths. Skill was probably never an issue, and speed in the Downs. Maybe it was just confidence, and I think us concentrating on ourselves probably gave us that extra bit of confidence as well. And like I suppose the Leinster Championship, we kind of just took it game by game. We prepared so well for the first day against RD, prepared as good as for the quarter final of Leinster than any other game I think nearly this year. And we got a serious performance, and we were the better side that day by a long bit, a good bit. So we took huge confidence from that going into Ratholt and Croke Park. And look, I thought we were the better team, as I mentioned, over the 65 minutes. And that leads us into this weekend where we're looking forward to the challenge ahead again,
Your joint captain Luke Loughlin said after the win against Ratholt he was nearly sick of doing interviews over the past while because people are becoming so familiar with his story now at this stage. But he keeps grabbing the headlines for the right reasons. I mean, his Westmeath form was excellent during the year in the Tailteann Cup. He's carried that form after he got over his injury at the start of the club season, had to play very well for you. And I thought he took his points very, very well at Croke Park the last day as well. He's writing his own headlines here now.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, to be honest, it's exactly what you said. He's writing the headlines for his performances on the field. And to be honest, he knows himself. There's more in him again. There's definitely more in Luke Loughlin. It's crazy to say that he scored 5 points in the last 4 really important championship games for us in the Downs. A lot of which are from play, but he knows there's more in him again, and there's probably going to be more expected from him this week again as the challenge gets greater. But everyone's obviously very aware of his story, his upbringing now at this stage, and I suppose for him to bounce back so quick from them setbacks he's had is very impressive. And as mentioned before, we're very proud of him, and off the field he's a great lad, and now but on the field, obviously, he was always an excellent footballer, and off the field, he's really turned his life around as well. So we're delighted for him, and obviously he's a pivotal player in our team. We're going to need him at full strength and full form at the weekend for us to compete.
Noel, would you mind if we went back to the Croke Park factor and getting to play there at the weekend? As a club, I'm sure for a lot of lads, it may have been their first time playing in Croke Park. I'm not sure how many of them, but how much of an impact does that have, playing under lights, the buzz, getting the club up, all the parish up the road? It was a great setting for it. And now you're going into the Leinster final. Does it make that much of an impact?
Does it make that much of an impact? I suppose only every player themselves know the impact it has on them. We're looking around now, to be honest, I didn't think it really fazed much of us. And I don't really think it's going to matter really this weekend again. The game has changed from the second game now, so it's going to be under lights again. So it's probably similar conditions to the last day. Hopefully not, obviously, as wet and as rainy as the last day. But look, I don't really think I think everyone managed fairly well. A lot of our younger lads stepped up well. A lot of the lads that played in Croke Park had good games. That previously played in Croke Park had good games. To be honest, I don't really think it affects us too much. Look, it's a very special place to play. As you mentioned, a lot of the guys wouldn't have played there before, but we're hoping that we bring a similar attitude this weekend, and I don't really think the pitch or the lights or the crowd really matters that much. So yeah.
Okay, good stuff. It's obviously moving season. In terms of managers for clubs that aren't involved in the latter stages of the provincial championships. You guys have made a habit of getting good managers over the last couple of years. I know you had Jono involved before, and you've had Larwall in now. When do you know that it's going to click with the manager? Can you give us any insight into when you knew it was going to work with Larwall?
Well, to be honest, we've had some obviously good managers that that come in from, external clubs, external counties, obviously John O'Mahony, as I mentioned, and Larwall. We also had Stephen Cleary there, who's a Downs man, would have won a couple of championships with the Downs. He was with us and had a lot of success with underage. Was with us for a number of years as well. He was our manager last year. And very unlucky not to get success with us. We've been getting, this year was our 5th semi-final in a row, and we got over towards past this year. Obviously created history getting to the final for the first time since 2005. I don't really know, I can't really pinpoint, I suppose, what Lara has brought, or if it is Lara really that has brought, the success. The team itself has got that year wiser. Our panel this year is we have everyone nearly available to us, bar maybe one player went to Australia this year, Conor Murray, who's a huge loss. Probably a loss we didn't think we'd be able to do without at the start of the year. But I suppose a couple of new players have stood up this year, the likes of Aina Burke, and our bench has gotten off lot stronger, and they've probably pushed themselves on this year, knowing there was a new manager from outside the county, and that it's a clean slate. So I think maybe when a new manager comes in, it's a new opportunity for players that probably wouldn't have got game time previously, or if there's an internal manager, maybe they might have, they might nearly have the team picked maybe before they're in. But it's just, Lara, as I mentioned, Lara really concentrates on maybe the opposition himself, and he just leaves us to do the football and express ourselves on the field. That's the one thing that I can take from Lara Wall this year. When I came back in from County Hurling, I did notice a kind of a different attitude maybe the other years. I thought that the team was more settled without their county players. We went unbeaten in the league this year and won the league, I think, for the first time in a good while as well. So there was, I suppose, a different type of form there as well. The first couple of games, he left off a lot of us, maybe myself and Dara, the 2 county hurlers, and left off 1 or 2 of the county footballers, and we were still able to, compete well and win the league. So they were in a better position, I suppose, when we came back in. I think maybe this year as well, the likes of myself and Dara had an extra month or 2 as well with the fifth season as well to concentrate on the football too, once we came back with the footballers going well in the Tailteann Cup. So I think personally, I can speak for myself that has probably resulted in better form myself as well. So.
Okay. Unbeaten for the year, having come through the front door in the championship in Westmeath on the back of win the league, unbeaten in Leinster so far. Just one final one for you, Niall. What's this weekend going to mean for the club? Like we said at the outset, 17 seasons you had to wait to get a Westmeath title again. You lifted the Flanagan Cup and got that bit done. To now be going back to a Leinster final for the first time in probably the memory of anyone in the club who might have been around in 1972. This is a massive occasion for the area this weekend. Yeah,
it's a huge occasion. To be honest, Lara is kind of unusual because it is a huge weekend, but I know everyone is really anticipated for it. They're really excited. Haven't chatted to a couple of people, but we've kind of been, sheltered away. We kind of were the buzz and stuff like that. We're not seeing too much of it. We train obviously on our particular nights, but we've kind of just been doing our own thing, to be honest, and we haven't seen too much excitement, if you know what I mean, while maybe in other teams I was involved in, there's something clearly going on every night and people are coming in and there's, nights with supporters and stuff like that as well. So, yeah, there's huge excitement there, massive, it's a massive day for the club as it is for Kilmacud Crokes. I know we're going to have a great following there. The Downs is a relatively big club. There's a huge amount of underage there, so we're hoping that literally everyone will be up there. I'm sure they will be in Cole Park on Sunday. We hope that, I suppose, the general Westmeath supporters and, other clubs will get behind us. So, yeah, look, we're really looking forward to the occasion. Like, we know it's a huge battle ahead of us. We are confident. We know if we bring a great performance, a good performance, we won't be too far away. But, it's huge for the club. As you said, 50 years, exactly 50 years since our last Leinster final. That was against Dublin opposition, and unfortunately, they were bet on the day. So we're hoping that we can rewrite history and, create some of our own,
Yeah, we'll see if he can go closer than the class of 72 against Vincent's. Niall, thanks a million for joining us.
Thanks, guys. All the best.
Huge
Best of luck, Noel.
weekend for Kilmacud Crokes, as Niall mentioned there as well. They're going to try and potentially win a Leinster club double because they're going to be in the hurling final as well. Oisin O'Rourke, who was their top scorer in the win against St Mullins last weekend, has been speaking to Oisin Langan, who also caught up with Owen Cody. Here's what both had to say to Oisin ahead of the final.
Croke Park, no matter what time of year you're playing Croke Park, it's like a summer's game. It's mad really how it is, but yeah, it is. It's just how well the sod is kept and just the whole environment of Crokers. It's always a quick game. It's always a lot of space, a lot of scoring. So we're really looking forward to it. It could be a very intense game. Very, very likely. Because we know what Kilmacud will bring. Like they're obviously they're hungry. They're young. They have never. I was talking to one of the players last night. They've never been in Leinster Final Four. That this group hasn't. So they're all very, very hungry and like they're there to make history. And we're in their way, so they're going to come at us with everything, and we're going to go at them with everything as well.
Probably one of the best teams now played the game in recent years, so massive challenge, but look, one we're really looking forward to, and it's just going to be, I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be exciting, it's going to be a tough game, it's going to be a tactical battle, but look, we'll train tonight and we'll see what areas we can look at to try get at Ballyea and what many strengths they have and what many strengths we'll have to try and negate against them on Sunday as well.
And just before I let you go, it's Kilmacud Crokes on the double. It's been changed a bit so Brian Sheehy can play in the hurling and then be part of the football squad. He's the only dual player. Were you glad for Brian because he's such a big part of both squads, but obviously he would play more hurling?
I think it's good. Overall, I think it was just common sense prevailed probably. Wouldn't have been ideal now to be playing maybe or toggling the football and even coming on for a bit, warming up and then having to come in again and warm up again for the hurling. So I think, it's just common sense prevailed so that he'll play probably the full 60, hopefully, if he's all right. And then if he's able to contribute then to the footballers after, I think it makes much more sense. So I'm delighted for Brian and I'm sure that suits him most.
Yeah, Tommy, it's not easy for Brian Sheehy in this situation where it was known from a while out that both of the Leinster finals were going to be on the same afternoon in Croke Park. It only becomes a factor really when you win the two semi-finals and qualify. So the talk kind of ramped up after the hurling game against St Mullins last weekend. But this works out nicely with the flip because generally he has played with the hurlers all of the games and has kind of been a bit of an impact sub for the footballers. So in theory at least he goes out, plays the hurling on Sunday afternoon, takes a break, bit of recovery, and then he's available as an option for the bench for the footballers in the second game.
Yeah, I don't know how much recovery you can get in between, but yeah, no, 100% will. Like it's an impossible situation, and it was good to see the finals moves and flip that it could possibly help in any way. We've seen so many instances over the last couple of years where players have been left in the lurch with this, whether it's at women's football, camogie, hurling, and football as well. It's so difficult to get right. It's just not easy. Like, whatever we can do to make it easier to play dual, I think we should. I know there's a lot of debate at the minute about the Wexford system, whether that worked, and I think they're sticking with it one more year where they went hurling for a couple of weeks, football for a couple of weeks. But when you get to this stage and when two teams are, getting to the latter stages, getting to finals, and there's so few weeks in the year to play them, it's kind of hard to know what to do, So I think they've done what they can, and best wishes to Brian Sheehy. Hopefully he gets to make an impact in both games.
All right, let's get round to your power rankings for the All-Ireland Club Football Championship. I'm going to give out Keane Johnson's ones first because he put in loads of research, put this together. This is Offaly footballer Keane Johnson, who was given his last 8, which might give away his predictions for the finals this coming weekend. So in 8th place, he's got Newcastle West. So he's not expecting them to win the Munster final in a couple of weeks' time. Tourlestrane, big weekend for them. First final in 40 years for them. He reckons they're going to lose out in the Connacht final. He's got the Downs in 6th place, so he's expecting Kilmacud to beat the Downs. Then he's got O'Reilly's in 5th place, so he expects Kieran O'Reilly's to win the Munster Championship but then be 5th best of the teams who are left in the Championship. Then he's got Mike Cullen of Galway just above them. Then we get into the top 3 contenders, which just goes to show how important this Ulster final is going to be in deciding who lifts the cup at the end of the year. He's got Glen in 3rd place, Kilmacud Crokes in 2nd, and the defending champions Kilcoo, who are in 1st. So what changes are you making to your power rankings compared to Keane then?
Well, the first change will, and I don't know if you're putting words in Keane's mouth there, but this isn't judged on who I think is going to make it through. This is judged on the best teams left in the All-Ireland Club Series. So, obviously that factors in who's going to make it through. You've got a couple of provincial heavyweights that are very close together. I'm going to go back to front.
Okay.
7 championships in a row in Sligo for Turlestrane. Right, they've been knocking on the door in Connacht for a couple of years. I think they fell short against Ballintubber one year. Killian O'Connor edged Ballintubber over the line. Knockmore kicked a couple of late points to beat them a few years ago as well. They're into their Connacht final, but they're up against a very, very good Mike Cullen side. So I'm not saying that the fairy tale can't happen for Turlestrane. I think there is going to be a chance, but Mike Cullen are going to have an off day, and they're going to need to do, something that they haven't done. So Turlestrane, number 8. Newcastle West, with the likes of Corbett and Sheehan, they're after getting the back in there of beating Clonmel Commercials. They'll be backing themselves to beat Cairns O'Reilly, who, as we mentioned earlier on, have had a sort of funny year. And I don't know what the mindset is like when you're representing the province and, you didn't win the prestigious county championship. Now, I know it's different in Kerry, the way that they work it, but it'll be interesting to see how that's going down in Strand Road. Like, I was listening to Radio Kerry to the Éire Óg Cairns O'Reilly game, and I was kind of struck by the fact that it's in Tralee, and apparently the Éire Óg supporters had outnumbered the Cairns O'Reilly supporters. So now that's what they were saying, and maybe it's because red stands out more than blue, and maybe they just wore their colours down from Éire Óg, but that was certainly the vibe at the weekend. So Newcastle West for me are 7th. I struggled over the next one. I have the Downs 6th, but I feel like the Downs could be ahead of Cairns O'Reilly, to be honest. So I have the Downs in 6th place. Maybe I've been swayed a little bit by the fact by who I have number 1. But the Downs are a strong team, very good team. They've got an inter-county backbone there with the hurlers and the footballers. I don't know where you'd have them, Will, but I think they'll put it up to Kilmacud Crokes this weekend. Cairns O'Reilly's 5th. They've got David Moran, they've got Tommy Walsh, you've Coffey and Savage, Gavin O'Brien as well, who made a big impact for Peter Keane back in 2019 in the league. Very good team. But I think it's the next 4 who are ahead above the rest. Mike Cullen have been very impressive. They won a very competitive Galway championship. Don Connellan is coaching them. They've been very well set up, very well coached. A couple of very good footballers on that side. They're number 4. Number 3, we've got Glen, who are immediately going to go into number 2 if they win at the weekend, because number 2 is Kilcoo, the All-Ireland champions. I have Kilmacud Crokes as the number 1 team in the country. They were beaten after extra time last year by Kilcoo. We're not judging this on, last year's form. We're judging on this year's form. They've added Shane Walsh to their ranks. Yes, they've lost Paul Mannion. I don't know if he'll be back in January. I would harbour a guess that there's probably a chance that they'll get something out of him before this is over. They obviously struggled with him last year, but this year they've got Shane Walsh to pick up the pieces. Darragh Mullen is in good form.
Craig Diaz in incredible form.
Diaz in savage form. Rory Carroll has been a rock so far this year. I do have Kilmacud Crokes ahead of Kilcoo for that reason. They've added that little bit, like Shane Walsh, as if he's a little bit. So I had them number 1, but that clash between Glen and Kilcoo is going to be a cracking final as well in Ulster. So I'm open for correction on my power rankings so far.
No, I think, look, to take up your Kilmacud point, because they're now your number 1 as things stand. Remember we were chatting to Shane Horn around about this time last year, and he was just pointing out how it's helped them that O'Carroll wasn't in with the Dublin panel. He had just left the Offaly panel. Craig Diaz isn't involved with Dublin anymore. These guys are now able to focus for the entire year on Kilmacud, and these are all remarkably good players across the spine of their team.
They're inter-county footballers playing club football.
Exactly. And then you sprinkle in Shane Walsh, where in many ways he has probably mitigated the loss of Paul Mannion to injury this year a little bit. Like, as you mentioned, against Port Arlington, they didn't really need him because the other players got them over the line without any real problems. But to have Shane Walsh, if it gets into a clutch situation in the game against the Downs at the weekend or an All-Ireland semi-final or final, as you mentioned, they were talking about Mannion being into the new year before he'd even be able to do any recovery. Let's see if the third week in January comes around too quickly if they were to get to an All-Ireland final. I think they're a very, very solid group. But then again, even though Kilcoo have had to maybe escape with penalties already in the championship this year, on Saturday they were very, very good in the first half of that game and had it killed incredibly early. If they come through against Glen, you might well have to reassess your power rankings.
100%. Yeah, it depends on form as well. Like, and you see it with teams that nearly time it for the provincials. And like the Down County Championship is competitive. Kilcoo only edged through in a lot of those games. It wasn't just penalties that they needed. Like, there was extra time in a couple of games. So they have that in them. They're such a good outfit. It's hard to look past what Kilmacud Crokes has added. And like the bookies have it as well. They're short favourites. And that's probably because of the competitiveness of Ulster. That might change if Kilcoo get through the weekend, as you say. So do we have a breakdown of what way the semi-finals are sitting this year. I had it earlier on. I don't know. I can't remember what they are. Maybe Donnchadh will know when he joins us. But that obviously will make a difference as well, what way they're lining up.
Yeah, I can check out the Final Four bracket in a second, because we're going to be talking to Donnchadh about the hurling finals, including that very interesting one between Ballygunner and Ballyea in a moment. Let's hear from the Ballygunner camp then, the defending All-Ireland champions after winning the Tommy Moore for the first time last year. Their top scorer, Pádraig Mahony, who was so key against Na Piarsaigh last time out, had this to say about their game against Ballyea this weekend.
If you look back to when we played Ballyea in 2018, the game in Welsh Park, where I suppose they had us bet there only for, I think Philip maybe went up the pitch and double on one there to bring us to extra time, and we obviously dug it out in extra time. And obviously I think they've improved even since then. Obviously we completely ignored the game last year, because when you look at the calibre of players that Ballyea were missing on that day, I don't think it was a true reflection on Ballyea or the standard of an opposition that we're facing this weekend. So we're really just trying to, I suppose, find that balance now between getting our own preparations right and focusing on ourselves and bringing our A game, but also obviously counteracting that with ensuring that we're putting the measures in place that we can try and nullify the Ballyea attacking force that they have.
Donnchadh Boyle of the Irish Independent is with us now. Donnchadh, how are you getting on?
How are you, Will? How are things?
I'm good. We're looking forward to this game on Saturday afternoon at Semple Stadium. 3:15 start is on TG Carr for those who aren't able to make it to Thurles. On the face of it, Ballygunner were comfortable winners the last time they met against Ballyea, but as Pádraig Mahony was warning there when Tony Kelly was around the last time that they met, and maybe before Ballygunner had kicked on a different level, Ballyea gave them a right good rattle a few years ago.
Yeah, that's the kind of the question this weekend. Are we going to get a version of the 2021 game, which I covered and was 17 points in the end, and probably you could say Ballygunner award every bit of it, or it'll be more like the 2018 game, which went to extra time and was 3 points in the end. That going back to that 2021 game, Tony Kelly was missing, Garage O'Connell was missing. I actually covered Ballyea when they beat the Bars in the last round, and Tony Kelly made the point afterwards and said, look, we're a lot more like 2016 team now than they were last time around. But at the same time, you'd have to feel that Ballygunner are really gone on to a different level. They've won the All-Ireland since. They've been ruthless for a long, long time. The club itself is in rude health. They have them down. They were in a senior, intermediate and a junior A final in Waterford this year. They've been very strong at underage grades as well. So they just seem to be on a ferocious roll at the minute, and they have serious momentum that I think you would have to say that Ballyea will have to be near perfect to beat them this weekend. Yeah,
look, Ballygunner showed no ring rust whatsoever despite the couple of months off in their first round game against Kilmacud. And then the last day, the second half performance, to keep the Limerick champions down to 4 points in the second half, probably as complete a 30 minutes as we've seen from Ballygunner in recent years in the second half of that semi-final. They are coming into this with a right bit of steam behind them going into the final.
Yeah, and the graph is trending upwards for them still. A lot of teams like they were chasing the Munster title for a long time, and didn't have a wonderful record in Munster for the return in Waterford. And then you'd be think when they finally got over the line and did it so dramatically with that Harry Ruddle goal and did it by beating Ballyea, which obviously are the benchmark for everyone. To be forgiven if they took a breath and maybe just took their eye off the ball a little bit, but they haven't done it. And as you say, that second half, I wouldn't be surprised if people around Ballygunner think that's as good a half of hurling that they've put together on this 9-year run they're on in Waterford. I'd be amazed if that wasn't their best 30 minutes that they put together. So, look, that doesn't make for good reading for Ballyea. But again, going back to what Tony Kelly was saying after the game, he made the point. He said, look, this time of year, the weather, the conditions, it always levels the playing field a little bit. So, look, they'll be going in and giving themselves a proper, and they're a proper team too. They've won Clare, I think, 4 of the last 7 seasons, and they've been around and they've been to Pro Park and they know what it's about. So, but you're the smart money you would have to say is on Ballygunner.
Yeah, Donnchadh, I think how are you, Tommy here? I think we were both in Ennis last year for that game, and it wasn't just the Tony Kelly factor, the physicality of Ballygunner and the ferocity of their tackling. It just looked like they were operating at a different level, and that was obviously before they got over the line. So it's frightening to hear that you think that their form that half against Na Piarsaigh is possibly even better. Like, we were looking at power ranking the club champions at the minute, and it's hard to get a read in Kilmacud's form. They're growing and they're getting into it. But Ballygunner, it sounds awesome at the minute.
Yeah, they do. And if memory serves, I don't think Ballyea scored from play until the 50th minute that day, Tommy.
Right,
so, you know, that's... And even watching that day, I was just watching two teams who were operating on different levels. You know, Ballygunner are very, very slick and fast. Everything they did was like razor sharp. Ballyea just weren't at that level. And, like, you know, there was 17 points, as I said. And, you know, Tony Kelly is absolutely wonderful. He's box office in every way. But it seems like an awful ask to let him try and get him and the one or two other lads they've back as well, try and get him to drag up the level. Now, he was quite confident, said, listen, we're stronger than where we are. You know, we'll have learned lessons from that. And, you know, he's capable of pretty much anything. So if they are to have, the one thing they have to figure out was the last day, Tommy, they kind of split the place ball thing between Niall Deasy and Tony.
Yes.
And, you know, it's never a good look for anyone, like, be it whichever free take or which one, you're kind of, well, I had this, or well, you hit that. And, you know, on the other side, I think it was Ben Cunningham for the Bars, hit almost everything that came his way. Of course, for that last effort, it just fell right from the 65 and the last day. So they need to figure that out in the interim to try and they'll have to take pretty much everything that comes their way and hope that they maybe get a break or two along the way, because, like, as I say, that Ballygunner second half against a team like Na Piarsaigh as well, like, who've been around the block, who have loads of established hurlers who have done really well in club championship in the past. You know, there was that second half was Wills had 4 points in the second half. Like, that's remarkable.
Yeah, it's very difficult to separate Ballyhale and Ballygunner at the moment, which is why I think people are dreaming about the potential showdown in the All-Ireland series. We know now that St Thomas will be representing Galway after their 1 point win against Loughrea as well. But, I mean, do you kind of have a handle on it now at the moment, Donnchadh? Like, the difficult thing that's going to happen for all these teams after the provincial finals this weekend, they've got an All-Ireland semi-final which comes around pretty quickly in a couple of weeks' time, and then they've got effectively a month to bridge to the All-Ireland final after that.
Yeah, it's probably the two All-Ireland finalists. Like, they'll be delighted to be in an All-Ireland final, but their Christmas will look very different than what it might have looked if they weren't. Yeah, it's a tricky one, you know, when it probably comes back to the calendar, and I think everyone in the ideal world would have everything wrapped off and boxed nice and neatly before Christmas. But, you know, that's a work in progress at the minute, the calendar, you know, and there's probably more change in the medium term, I would say, in terms of what's going to be played when and where. But as far as that's concerned, like, to be honest, I just think Tomás O'Shea made this point recently. I think we just have too many competitions that we're trying to squeeze in. And I think if you're going to try and maintain everything, you're going to have to take the rough with the smooth. So it's going to mean Sigerson and Fitzgibbon around the National League. And it's going to mean things like maybe the All-Ireland Club Series being played after Christmas. Otherwise, you're going to have to make some fairly dramatic cuts that will annoy somebody else somewhere along the line as well. So, you know, there's always unintended consequences to these things. You know, at the laugh last year when was it Armagh and Galway went to penalties, and people were saying afterwards, it was, you know, that's no way to decide a game. This, you know, these players have been training all year. That decision had been made like 8 months previous. You know what I mean? You know, that was the time to think about what might happen in terms of championship games being decided. So, look, the calendar thing is, I actually think it's something that will never be fixed. I do not think it will ever be fixed. I think you would have to get rid of competitions to give everything the breathing space that everyone thinks their competition deserves. And that just there is not enough weekends in the year for that.
Donnchadh, one other provincial hurling final this weekend, which is the Ulster decider, and Slaughtneil, disappointment for their Camogie team last week. Their footballers lost out to Glen in the Derry Championship, so everything's in the basket of hurling now for them as they look to defend their provincial title. Very impressive against it was Portaferry last time out, won by double digits. They've got Dunloy this year in the final, the Antrim champions who've come through. That's a 1:30 start on Sunday. Are we expecting Slaughtneil to win the championship again this year?
That certainly seems to be the feeling. Like, they've had the sign over Dunloy. I think it's 3 times in a row they've played in the last few years in the Ulster Championship, and Slaughtneil have won each time. And judging by people who are, for what they were saying, are more familiar with the club hurling scene, what they did to Portaferry in that game was quite awesome. And I suppose it's important to note, as you mentioned there, that they were put out of the football after the final stage, so they're not double jobbing at this time of year, which they have done an awful lot in the past recently. So you've had, since they were beaten in the county final, and Brendan Rodgers was talking about this, beaten in the county final, they took a day and then they went back hurling on the Tuesday night. So they've only had one code to concentrate on, and Chrissy McKaig was saying during the week, like, that helps. They, over the course of the year, he was making the point that they lose versus other teams who are chasing Ulster and All-Ireland honours. They lose hours and hours of hurling time over the course of the year because they're also playing football at a very high level. So that will absolutely help them and bring them on. Like Donnchadh have won 4 in a row in Antrim, but they haven't played since the 16th of October.
Right.
A competitive game. That was when they won the Antrim Championship. So we've seen a few bits and pieces of club teams coming off a long break, and it's always hard to do something like that. So yeah, the signs will be pointing at Slaughtneil. Like, they've some people probably maybe be more familiar with Chrissy McKaig as a footballer, and maybe Brendan Rodgers, who I mentioned, as a footballer.
And Shane McGuigan.
He's a brilliant hurler. They're genuinely brilliant hurlers, and I saw Brendan Rodgers score an absolutely brilliant goal in Newry a couple of years ago in an Ireland club semi-final against Ballyea. So they're proper hurlers, and their results against the likes of Ballyea who they played, and the likes of Ballygunner, I think you're talking 4 or 5 points to meet them. So they're a proper outfit by any stand. Like, people maybe sometimes there's still little sort of patronising comments about Ulster hurling. I think like Slaughtneil have put that to bed over the last couple of years. They're a proper team. And I think if they come out of it as expected, they're on the St. Thomas's side of the draw. I heard you talking about the draw earlier. The hurling draw has St. Thomas's and the Ulster champions. So, both of those teams be looking at, that's a real chance to get back to an All-Ireland final. The Ulster, whoever wins the Ulster championship and St. Thomas's, like, that's a proper thing. And the other side of the draw, if it goes to form and everything we expect, could see Ballygunner and Ballyhale in an Ireland semi-final if they win their respective games. So, it's coming together nicely for an epic finish to this championship.
Yeah, I would definitely take that as a semi-final in the middle of the month. Donnchadh, thanks a million as always.
Thanks very much, lads.
Just enough time to tell you about the fixtures which we have this coming weekend. We'll start with the hurling games in the provincial finals this coming weekend. Starting with Saturday, you've got the Munster decider between Ballyea and Ballygunner. That game is a 3:15 start. It's on TG Carr at Semple Stadium. Then on Sunday, we've got the Leinster Senior Hurling Championship final, which is now at a new throw-in time of 2:30. That game will be live on TG Carr as well, where Ballyhale Shamrocks will go up against Kilmacud Crokes. And we've also got the Ulster Club Senior Hurling Championship decider, which we just mentioned, between Donnchadh Cucullins of Antrim against Slaughtneil of Derry. That's at the Athletic Grounds, 1:30 on TG Carr's YouTube. We've also got football finals this coming weekend across the provinces too. The Leinster Senior Football Championship final, now a 4:30 start. This is on TG Carr. The Downs against Kilmacud Crokes. Kilmacud looking for that Leinster double. And the Connacht Senior Football Championship final between Galway's Moy Cullen and Torlestrane of Sligo is an early start on TG Carr. That is the 12:45 game. So Tommy, if you can't make it to Pearse Stadium or can't make it to any of those games at the weekend, there's a nice little collection of them across the TV. You're not going to miss these games this weekend.
There's a cracking weekend of coverage. Thank God there's no more 10 a.m. games in the World Cup as well, because we'll be able to squeeze in a bit more football. Do you know that did you see the way that the hurling semi-finals, one of them is going to be on the same day as the World Cup final?
Presumably that's going to be on a lot earlier in the World Cup final, was it?
I'm not sure, but sure, look, we can't blame the GA calendar for that one.
Well, there's only so many weekends to fit things in, but yeah.
I think there's a wedding in St. Thomas's on the 17th, so you had to push that game to the 18th. So that's why. That's fair.
I think it is.
That's fair.
I think that's the nightmare scenario. Your team is going well and you've got a wedding around it. So we were talking to Katrina McConnell about that. It's during the week where she had to get the helicopter on the Sunday to get across, kick 7 points, and her club gets to Croke Park to an All-Ireland final. So Tommy, great to have you. For anyone who hasn't caught it yet, the Football Pod, your last of the series was out this week. James Horn, your guest.
44. We've had more episodes than David Clifford has had games this year on the Football Pod, and James Horn is our last guest. He sat down with us for an hour, really interesting chat. We covered a lot, and there's about 15 minutes on where it went wrong with Mayo. So there's a lot in it, a lot outside of that, the good and the bad with James Horn's time over the last 12 years. He's had a massive influence on Mayo football. So have a listen and enjoy. And I'm enjoying all the coverage of the club championships, a couple of cracking weekends ahead. I'll talk to you soon.
Cheers, Tommy. Football Pod, you can check it out in the Football Pod stream wherever you get your podcasts, or the OTB GA stream, which is also where you can listen back if you've missed any of today's show. We'll be back on OTB social channels at 10:30 next Wednesday. The Club Championship Show here on OTB Sports, brought to you by AIB. Speak to you next week.
The Club Championship Show on OTB in partnership with AIB. Proud sponsors of the Football, Hurling and Camogie All-Ireland Club Championships. #the toughest.